The Episode 8 teaser strongly indicates that Luke will evolve away from the singular approach by the Jedi in using only the light side of the Force, and towards an interpretation that incorporates the dark side as well, thereby pushing towards true balance between the two sides. Whether it was Rey's words under the guidance of Luke that she could see both the light and the darkness, whereby they concluded that the balance between them is so much bigger, or Luke confidently concluding that the only truth he knows is that it's time for the Jedi to end, it's clear Luke is evolving in a new direction, one that will attempt to find true balance. But how did Luke ultimately come to these conclusions? Although we've discussed the importance of the potential for the Journal of the Whills to have influenced Luke's path, there's another written source that exists within the current canon that would equally, if not more so, influence Luke's journey towards an acceptance of the dark side and towards balance. In this video expose, I will explain how Luke's dark side evolution will be influenced by the works originating with the disciples of the Whills. In previous videos, I've discussed how Luke will come to be influenced by the Journal of the Whills, which was put back into the canon through the Force Awakens novelization and the novel Aftermath: Empire's End. Although it's not necessary to again document the potential connections between the Journal of the Whills and Luke's increased acceptance of the dark side, there are two important points about the journal. First, it's likely Luke came into contact with it through the Church of the Force, and second, the passage provided through the Force Awakens novelization implies that there must be a restructuring of Jedi philosophy that resolves the light and dark sides of the Force through a gray or balanced approach. I like this connection between the journal and Luke's evolution towards an acceptance of the dark side, as the Episode 8 teaser focuses on a set of written works, which are clearly important to both Luke and to the story of The Last Jedi, given their focus in the teaser. But although I've argued that it's possible that the journal could be included in this shot, there are other important works within the current canon that would also push Luke to philosophically understand the balance that exists between the light and dark. This important work is the collected poems, prayers, and meditations on the Force, a volume that was edited by Kozem Pell. The collection was a set of diverse writings on the subject of the Force, put together by Pell, who was a member of the ancient Force-worshipping organization called the Disciples of the Whills. The fact that the disciples would produce works that would promote a balance between the light and dark sides shouldn't be too surprising, given what we already know about the Guardians of the Whills, another Force-based religious order who watched over the disciples so that they could worship in the Temple of the Kyber on Jedha. As seen through Chirrut, the Guardians believed that no one organization could ever hold a monopoly on understanding the cosmic energy field known as the Force. Differing greatly from the beliefs of the Jedi Order, the Guardians refused to emphasize the discord between the light and dark sides of the Force. Rather, they promoted a philosophy that sought to understand and encompass the totality of the Force, both the lightness and the darkness. The disciples clearly adopted a very similar belief as the Guardians who watched over them, as the collected poems, prayers, and meditations on the Force put together by the disciple Kozem Pell includes a wide range of works that unite on the concept of balance and the understanding that the true nature of the Force consists of both the light and dark sides. Although it isn't possible to look at all of the works within the collection, I want to point out the most important ones and some of my favorites, as given the important focus that was given to the written works within the Episode 8 teaser, I believe that the collection will have an important impact on Luke and his evolution towards the dark side and the concept of balance. The first work in the collection that we'll look at is by Sajar Omo from the clan of the Tora Boda. It's a relatively simple one and states, "In darkness I follow the light and find my way to the beginning again and again and again." I like this one because it represents the story of Anakin Skywalker in many ways. It also demonstrates the errors that the Jedi Order made, with Yoda and Obi-Wan specifically, in that the dichotomy between the light and dark sides are not absolutes. That is, contrary to what Yoda believed about Anakin, traveling down the path of the dark side doesn't result in one's future being dominated by darkness. It could be a powerful passage for Luke, as it would coincide exactly with what he knows about his father, that it is possible to utilize the dark side and then use the light to avoid being consumed by it, thereby further pushing Luke toward developing a conception of the Force that relies on the totality of it, and not merely a singular approach to light or dark. Next is my favorite passage from the collection, which is a poem from Oz Ladnod, who was a poet to the royal court of Onderon. The poem is long, but it bears repeating in full, because as we'll see, there's so much within the passage that would influence Luke to look to create balance between the light and dark. The poem states, "Those who set a course and cannot adjust their heading will break upon the rocks as surely as those who sail heedless of direction. We cannot change the direction of the wind, nor can we afford to be blown whichever way it so chooses. So it is in all things that I wish to honor those who have come before. So it is in all things that I wish to prepare the way for those who shall come after. And I remind myself, in the Force, there is no end, but only beginnings." This poem would have a significant amount of meaning for Luke. The opening lines directly relate to the folly of the Jedi Order, wherein they set a course that dogmatically adhered to only the light side, and where they ultimately broke upon the rocks and were destroyed during the Clone War. The next lines indicate that a Force user must operate through the Force as it exists, which is a phenomenon that is composed of two sides, light and dark, as this reality can't be changed, just like the direction of the wind can't be changed. This is exactly what the Jedi Order didn't do, as they perverted the Force by dedicating themselves solely to the light and rejecting anything that even approached the dark. In many ways, they tried to change the Force by creating it without its dark element. But as the passage presents, you can only go in the direction of the wind, and for the Force, its direction is one that consists of both the light and dark sides. However, as the passage further demonstrates, you can't simply allow yourself to be blown by the wind. Force users can't allow themselves to be consumed by the Force, and they have to ensure that they maintain control over themselves when using it. These lines would have enormous consequences for Luke, as he would recognize that although he would have to maintain control, he can't fight the reality that the dark side exists and is part of the Force. He has to proceed knowing that the Force is the dark side too. The next set of lines would also be important for Luke, as they suggest that even though it's possible to honor those who came before him, that is, the Jedi Order in this case, Luke must prepare the way for those who come after him. This would seem to suggest to Luke that although he can still honor the dogmatic and singular approach of the Jedi, and take what he can in that regard, which did work for a time in fairness, he must break away from the Jedi's practices, for it's necessary that Luke discovers an approach to the Force that will come to assist those in the galaxy within the present. I believe that this will lead Luke to move towards the dark side and start to find true balance, which, just as the last line of the poem states, would be a new beginning. Another short passage also demonstrates how the collection put together by the disciples of the Whills could influence Luke to find balance with the Force. Written by Leitch Minglasane, it states, "Where you see darkness, I see stars." This just further reiterates the connectedness between the light and dark sides of the Force, in that there is never one without the other. But it's also a work that could show Luke the relativeness of the Force, and give him the perspective to accept the dark side to a greater extent than the Jedi. It might be telling for Luke, in that where the Jedi looked upon the dark side as something that only contained darkness and was to be completely avoided, Luke could have the ability to look at it differently, with the possibility for new potentials. Finally, I want to say something quick about one more entry within the collection, which is a great metaphor for the Force. It was written by Djamie Shallan, a teacher and priestess of the Janus IV, and states, "We are awash in emotion, every day, every moment. We are buffeted, we are confused, and sometimes, yes, we are consumed. When the pond is disturbed, we cannot see within. When the pond is still, we can see with clarity. In both instances, the water is still there. So too is the Force like the water, whether you see it clearly or not. The interesting aspect of this entry, and why it might be important in relation to Luke's evolution to the dark side, is due to the fact that it speaks to the constant nature of the Force, and the fact that the Force itself is above its components of light and dark. Whether the water is disturbed or calm, the water is still there. And just like the Force, whether you're using the light or the dark, the Force is the constant, and both are still utilizing the Force. In the last two lines of the poem, it's again seen that it doesn't matter whether someone accepts that both sides of the Force are valid, as it's always present in both the light and dark sides. Luke could interpret this work to again move away from the old ways of the Jedi, who in failing to accept the dark side, failed to see the Force with clarity, thereby pushing Luke to evolve in the direction of the dark side. Given the Episode 8 teaser's focus on a set of books, I believe works such as the collected poems, prayers, and meditations on the Force will come to play an important role in Luke's understanding of the Force, particularly given that we know he went in search for Jedi lore after the fall of the Empire. The work put together by the disciples of the Whills is crucially important, as given the entries that we've seen, they would go a long way in helping Luke evolve his understanding of the Force, in being more accepting of the dark side, and attempt to find true balance between the light and the dark. So there we have it, how Luke's views of the dark side could be influenced by the disciples of the Whills. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me... For where you see darkness, I see stars.